Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, distinguished guests, and folks of all stripes, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans. From a diehard Houston sports fan, I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Astros podcaster. I'm a digital content creator, writer, self-appointed cookie philosopher, creative multi-hyphenate, and of course, I'm a Houston native, and I have the receipts to prove it. I finally can admit it. I run the Kolache factory like a bread and stuffing-minded Willy Wonka. You know, it's truly a magical place. I've spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer in Los Angeles, and now I am podcasting. That's what happens when you hit 10 years out here. You wake up one day calling the movie industry just the industry, and they give you a podcast. Welcome to said podcast. This is what my brother calls the Paul Broadpod Ball Blog. Hey, brother, check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience, depending on how you want me to, or how you interpret my enunciation of that word. I started Space Cadet Sports as a passion project because most media is infuriating as a diehard long-term fan of your Houston Astros. So here we try not to be doom and gloom Astros fans, or worse, the national media haters. We love our team and try to root them on, and we want to discuss the ins and outs of them without too much homerism. Keyword try. We try to be reasonable and not too hot-takey or reactionary. And of course, you know, this year we expanded into covering all three of the major Houston sports teams. So we talk a lot of Houston on this podcast. We are recording this transmission here in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined by my co-host and co-producer, The Roz. To my Frasier, Carla the dog is here with me. She may get on mic from time to time. She looks up as I'm saying her name here, asking for some pets. She's a good girl, but she has the hot takes on this podcast. Frequent listeners to the podcast know this. But we're doing good here. We are, this episode is part 2 of our spring training previews and roster breakdowns with Space Cadet. Last time we did the outfielders. This time we're scheduled to do the infielders. However, it has been a tumultuous time here in the Astros depth chart, if nothing else, with the speculation of Bregman potentially re-signing with the Astros, me potentially doing my vocal warm-ups before a podcast. I think on that note, I should just take a good, healthy sip of my coffee. Regular listeners of the podcast know lately I've been guzzling down that coffee during the records. It's been... I have a new job that I've taken on. There are new things that I'm doing, new gigs, new adventures, new opportunities. So I've been very busy lately. These podcasts have been recorded during my coffee times. But we're excited about the Houston Astros, what's going on here. We'll get into it. We'll get into, the ramifications for the Houston Astros outfield. I recorded last week's podcast before the news was really breaking, that it, at least in a way that had some reality to it. You know, one person saying the Astros have the door cracked, and a source, corroborating that. It's definitely, I'm not just trying to say the news was out there, but I just didn't see exactly that the Astros would be on this path this week, having traded Ryan Pressly. Before we get completely into it, I do want to give a good day, mate, to my Australian listeners. I did the singular. I guess maybe that could be true, but I want to give a good day, mates. A good day, mates, to my Australian listeners. If you're a first-time listener of this podcast, right out the gate, this podcast was just outside the top 100 of Australian baseball podcasts. So I try to bump those numbers up by saying a good day, mate, to all the Australian listeners. I also say if you know an Australian, let them know we're out here. This podcast exists. We want to get their listens. Obviously, if you know any Houston Astros fans, any Houston sports fans, some H-Town hustlers, let them know we're out here, that I am out here stumbling through my pronunciations, trying to let the good people of Houston know what's happening with our teams. But let's get into it. Let's get into this infield preview. Obviously, last time we did the outfield preview, we did not factor Jose Altuve in as a prospective left fielder. So obviously that changes things up just slightly a little bit. It definitely changes up who we could bring to the major league club from that spring training invitee list, if nothing else. I do think that is a reality. Alex Bregman joining the team and the infield being a little packed up. So let's kind of get to it. We will add Alex Bregman to this list of infielders here, but let's kind of get a rundown of the infielders that the Astros are taking with them to spring training, who are invited to spring training. And we have some new additions here. Obviously, last time we talked about the big subtraction of Kyle Tucker from the outfield, but we have two huge big additions to this infield that we can talk about, that we've talked about this offseason already. The Houston Astros, Jim Crane and Dana Brown were very proactive this winter. Some will say that they were too proactive. In the sense that they traded away Kyle Tucker before they really needed to. I guess is the way to put it. Kyle Tucker was going into his last year of his contract before free agency, a contract that was very team friendly. And instead of losing Kyle Tucker to free agency because they were not, obviously, with some preliminary negotiations, they could tell that Kyle Tucker was going to want and demand a much bigger contract than the Astros were willing to do or had the space to do. So what they did, instead of running it back with one more year of Kyle Tucker, is they went the very conservative route of getting something for Kyle Tucker before he walks, using this homegrown talent as a bargaining chip instead of letting him play out his last season here in Houston. Now, fans generally like to have their cake and eat it too. So a lot of fans, they would say, Carlos Correa, goodness, it's been so long, I almost forgot his name. Carlos Correa walked for nothing. George Springer walked for nothing. There's these huge Astros that went and signed with other teams that the Astros could have traded away and got something back for. But I'm not exactly the type of guy that thinks that it always makes sense to just trade away a player on their final year of the contract. I see in this situation, I definitely see why you would trade Kyle Tucker here. With the subtraction of Tucker, I should say with the subtraction of Alex Bregman, with everything that's been happening, the last season and this, with Joe Espada being the new manager, with Dana Brown being the new general manager, with a lot of personnel changeover, it just kind of felt like a moment to maybe just kind of put a dividing line in the sand and say we're reinventing this team. You cannot rebuild a team and stay competitive. So they're reinventing the team. They're taking this opportunity to reinvent it, and they're using the talents of Kyle Tucker to get them some things back. I think for me, it hurts so bad that I can't excuse the logic of it. I do understand the logic of it. I think the logic of it is fairly clean. I think you don't want to do this to many of your players, but I understand why this was a good option for Kyle Tucker. But with that happening, with Kyle Tucker leaving, we ended up getting Isaac Paredes here on the team. Isaac Paredes is going to have a good time hitting at Minute Maid Park. If you look at his, if you're a data nerd like me, you look at his blade charts, you're looking at where he likes to hit. Isaac Paredes could have a really good season at Dyken Park. I know some of you are still getting used to it. Grow up. Things change. Things change all the time. There's no use complaining about things changing like Dyken Park, right? We live in a time where a lot of things are changing. I know a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for Minute Maid. Me saying, get over it is more saying like get over it because we have much more important things to worry about. We have much more important changes to worry about. Minute Maid Park never gave me any money for being, or I guess I should say, Minute Maid Park never gave me any money. That's true. Minute Maid never gave me any money for having the naming rights of that field. So I do feel the nostalgia, but it's not like we're losing out on some deal here. Business happens. We can't control it. They went with another thing. There's just so many things to get worried about and so many things to be stressed about in this world. I know sometimes that the like shiny thing to go for is to be angry about things that are completely out of your control because they're more fun to be angry about. But just it's so silly. It was called Enron Field. Let's not act like it's a corporate naming partner for the baseball field. It's okay, folks. So anyway, off the soapbox real quick, where there's much more important things to be worried about. That's all I'm trying to say. Dyken Park is going to be a nice home for Isaac Paredes and his swing, and also new addition Christian Walker. Right now, as we are looking at our new additions, Christian Walker, I would say, he has the ability to potentially put up an MVP caliber season. I really am excited about Christian Walker on this team. He has some Gold Glove defense at first. I think with the way he hits and the way the Astros fundamentally have liked to approach baseball and the swings, not last season. Last season was a bit rough, but how they generally have been, preaching some patience over the last golden era. The aggression ramped up last season, but we're hoping with a little bit more patience with Christian Walker getting to hit into the Crawford boxes. There really could be a reality where Christian Walker comes out of the gate swinging, and really puts up some MVP style numbers. We need someone that has a hot start. I'm looking for him to kind of be that guy. At least that's my hope. I think Christian Walker could be an incredible answer at first base. I'm very excited about him. I think at third base, or at first base, we can continue here. We still have John Singleton on the roster. I'm super stoked about that. I think John Singleton is a great backup first baseman and DH. Obviously, if Alex Bregman comes back, I think a lot of people who could potentially DH, Yanner Diaz, John Singleton, maybe even a Chas McCormick here and there, Victor Caratini, maybe even a Zach DeZenzo who got some DH roles, or just giving those kind of spots will be limited if Bregman is back. So it's kind of hard to project a lot of these things. But going into this without Bregman, I was projecting John Singleton to get some DH stuff. Obviously, that could change, but he's definitely the first right in line there behind Christian Walker if I'm making a depth chart at first base. We also still have Zach DeZenzo, who had some time at first base for the Astros last season. Had a couple really big hits. He is still trying to put it together. I could see DeZenzo being a good quality glove at first base. There was an article by Brian McTaggart saying that Zach DeZenzo could potentially be an option at left field. And this was something I didn't know about yet, but I mentioned last week on the podcast that DeZenzo was taking reps in left field. There was lots of talks about that, but nothing really came into fruition. I don't know if Zach DeZenzo could truly be an answer in left, or if they're just trying to make sure he could be a little stopgap here and there if they needed him. So that remains to be seen, and the reason why I'm being so skeptical here truly is that I always get excited about the Astros giving people reps in practice, whether it's, way back in the day, giving reps to Jordan at first, or, whatever it may be. Sometimes getting reps in practice does not mean that you are going to actually see significant playing time there. So I say, let's just wait to see if Zach DeZenzo actually gets some left field playing time. It will be determined by many factors, one of them of which is definitely Alex Bregman returning. But that's kind of how I would shake out the first base side there. We can go ahead and move over to the other side of the diamond. Let's move over to third. We'll do the corners first, because those have a little more Alex Bregman reshaking out with some more Alex Bregman. Goodness, I'm struggling. I'm looking at this coffee like I can't take another sip. I've had so many, and I'm knocking my microphone around. But I truly think that third base, what I'm trying to say, has the most ramifications if Alex Bregman returns to the team. Obviously, right now, our starting third baseman is Isaac Paredes. While Christian Walker, I'm very bullish on as a player. I think he's going to have immediate ramifications for the team. He could potentially even be an MVP caliber player. I'm not saying he definitely will be. I'm just saying this is his potential. Isaac Paredes, I'm very excited about as well. I don't think he's quite there yet. I say I'm a fan. I'm not trying to sit here and say I'm the biggest scout. I do my reading. I try to read everything and watch everything so that you don't have to and come and tell you. I think Isaac Paredes is a little younger, obviously, and I think he has more potential to get better. He has a ceiling here that he hasn't quite reached. Christian Walker is more developed and final product. So I do think Isaac Paredes can continue to grow and get a lot better. I think his swing matches up really well with Dyken Park. I think he can be a really solid third baseman. I think we have been spoiled by Alex Bregman's defense. So, I'm not sure if he's going to completely live up to the Alex Bregman Gold Glove standard, if you will. I think Alex Bregman doesn't have as many Gold Gloves as he should, but I do think that Isaac Paredes, while he'd be a fine, solid, professional major league third baseman defensively, this would be taking a step back from Alex Bregman. After Isaac Paredes, the next person who would line up, obviously behind him, would be Shea Whitcomb. He's invited to spring training. Obviously, Shea had a really tough season last year at the major league level, but he had an amazing year at the minor league level. He went to the championship game with the Space Cowboys. He was the MVP of the championship. He was such an incredible player for the Space Cowboys. He could be good. He had a really tough game for the Astros. I believe that was that might have been in September, might have even been in October at that point. No, I think Shea had a really bad game. I think he had something like 4 or 5 errors in one game, and 4 of them I want to say was like in the same inning. I don't have that up in front of me. I hate giving out misinformation. So yeah, just take that with a grain of salt. Those of you who were here with me last season, write in, remind me how many errors he had. Remind me when that game was. Sorry, I don't have that up in front of me. I wasn't intending on bashing Shea Whitcomb here. I think Shea, he definitely is taking some lumps at the major league level, and I think that he is kind of ready to turn it on and figure it out and get those yips out of his head. And I think he could have a solid little season here. He might not be somebody that we're really excited about, but I mean, Gray Kessinger spent a lot of time with the team last season, even though there really wasn't the biggest spot for him except defensively as a substitution there behind Mauricio Dubon. So obviously, I think if Isaac Paredes was needing a day off, I think Mauricio slots in there a whole lot better. But for the spring training purposes, and because outfield is kind of up in the air, I was thinking maybe Mauricio would have more time subbing in the outfield. That is to be determined as well. So if I think you put Mauricio Dubon here, pencil him in right next to Shea Whitcomb for the spring training. See if Shea can get his way onto this team. And if he can't, then Mauricio Dubon is your backup third baseman, no problem, and you don't have to use that roster spot on Shea if he isn't quite ready. Also, obviously, if Zach DeZenzo is realistically getting some play in left field, that is going to put him tier above Shea Whitcomb with some finality there. That Zach also has some flexibility there to play outfield. So that's kind of your third base there. I do think Zach DeZenzo, speaking of him, could have some time at third, just like he did last season. I think defensively they prefer Shea, but that's also their preference. I'm not sure if that is just how it worked out, or if that's just me, trying to reach here, trying to figure out what they're doing. So that's third base, and then we'll go over here to shortstop with Jeremy Pena, JP3, who kind of has caught the ire of a lot of Astros fans, if we're being honest. After last season, some of his defensive issues, I think a lot of people saw his fall back to earth and are like, I don't know how I feel about JP3. I know a lot of baseball pundits feel that way. I was reading Michael Ballman's Fangraphs article, and he's not a huge fan of the Astros. I think he would say that. I think he would come onto the podcast and say that to my face. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here, but he wrote an article that was disparaging to Alex Bregman. Even in the subtitle, he said in the article that he thinks Jeremy Pena is a very overrated shortstop, and I understand what he's saying. Jeremy Pena, JP3 came here. Showed that he could more than carry Carlos Correa's load, and was a World Series MVP when Correa left. He has struggled a little bit with his swing, obviously trying to find some consistency, trying to figure out a way to pick up those sliders down and away. He struggled last season getting the yips a little defensively. I think he's going to bounce back. I think JP3 is too much of a professional. He is figuring it out. He's too much of a grinder to let one little step back season really kind of define him and say, like, this is his ceiling as a baseball player. I think this season he completely bounces back, and I think, he might not have, hands down best shortstop in the league all-star run, but I think he goes on an all-star run this season and really silences some of those haters to show what a quality ball player he is. So I think, and just, when I was saying Isaac Paredes is young, Isaac Paredes is younger than Jeremy Pena by a couple years. He's the youngest, actually no, Zach DeZenzo is younger than Isaac Paredes, but he is one of the younger players in the infield being brought to spring training, obviously, in that same zone as Zach DeZenzo and Shea Whitcomb. He's in between them in terms of age. And I'm just bringing that up because Jeremy Pena still is young. He still has time to figure this out, but so do those other guys by that extension as well. So I do think having a lot of these young infielders will be good for the Astros. I think we're looking at Brice Matthews, even coming up still. Like, I'm excited about Brice Matthews. I think he could really help the Astros out going forward. But I think when it comes to the shortstop here, Jeremy Pena, is a shortstop right now. I don't think that's changing. I think Brice Matthews, while I'm very excited about him, I don't think he has a long-term use for the Astros at shortstop. He doesn't seem to exactly have the defensive mind for shortstop, and I hate that I even said that. I think what I'm trying to say, and with all apologies to Mr. Brice Matthews, it's not a mindset thing, it's more of a footwork thing that I'm trying to say. So it's more of the aggression when he's playing shortstop. He doesn't always charge at the ball. Sometimes he waits a little bit for it, and that in turn makes your throw need to be that much quicker out of your glove. So I apologize. That was some weird wording on my part. But yeah, I think it's just more of a footwork thing / mindset thing. But I'm not trying to, it's like those body language experts are saying that somebody doesn't have the right psyche for it, or just is mentally tough. Some of those things, they don't really mean anything. It's just kind of rude things that podcasters and writers say sometimes. So I try to be a little more concrete in my criticism there. I do think Brice Matthews is going to be a great ball player. I think his long-term solution is not going to be at shortstop. So, I don't anticipate him making the squad as a backup shortstop here, or to give JP3 a run for his money. I think Jeremy Pena is going to be the shortstop for the Houston Astros, full stop there. When you're looking at the top 10 of top 10 first baseman, Christian Walker would be there. Top 10 third baseman. Both Alex Bregman and Isaac Paredes were on that list that I was looking at from MLB. Jeremy Pena is not on the top 10 list of shortstops right now. His stock definitely has kind of dropped throughout the league. But I think that this is just a good thing for Jeremy Pena. I want JP3 to be hungry and to prove the haters wrong, and I think he's going to have a great season here too. I think it is going to be, a good season for JP3. So Shea Whitcomb here would probably slot in as the backup shortstop, I would say. Obviously, once again, with Mauricio Dubon kind of penciled in there right there next to him, depending on how the outfield shakes up. So I could see, for spring training, Shea Whitcomb's that backup, but Mauricio Dubon kind of knowing that this is your role. You are the backup for third base and for shortstop. And yeah, I think that's just kind of where it is right now. And that can still be determined. And that's not the only thing that's up to be determined. It is also, we have Jorge Polanco. The Astros supposedly have still been looking at Jorge Polanco. And I think this was kind of confusing for me, because I feel like, Polanco is listed as a second baseman and shortstop. I don't think the Astros are looking for a full-time second baseman or shortstop. I think that they were looking at potentially using Polanco as the infield utility, and using Dubon as more of an outfield utility, or just straight up trading Dubon. When they were looking at Jorge Polanco, I was like, man, this is way too many infielders. But then when I heard that they were looking to trade Ryan Pressly, I got a little worried that they were going to trade my boy Doobie, and I thought maybe Doobie was going to be involved in the trade talks, because I was like, well, that might make sense. They're looking for another utility guy because their utility guy might be getting moved. But now that they have moved Ryan Pressly, and that was for Juan Bayo, they didn't send Dubon or anything else. So it's like, okay, Jorge Polanco would be just way too much. And he would definitely be way too much if they're signing Alex Bregman. It would be Bregman and Polanco, and you have Dubon, and you have Caratini. You have there's so many people. There would just be so many people in this infield. I do think that the door is open for Polanco. The door is open for Polanco or Bregman to be with this team. Obviously, I'm hoping it's Bregman, but we're putting Jorge Polanco in the mix because there is a reality in which he's an Astro, just as much of a reality of him being an Astro as Alex Bregman. But like I said, I truly thought that was because they were trading Dubon. So now that they're not trading Dubon, maybe he's just a safety net in case they don't sign Bregman. But yeah, so we're putting the pin in Jorge Polanco there. I think, I think there's even I think Polanco could even play outfield. I'm over here on his Fangraphs page trying to get that verified. They want me to become a member, folks. Okay. I'm getting out of here. I definitely have gone too far, and now I'm not paying attention to what I'm saying anymore. But I do think when we're looking at second base here, it'd be a wild scenario to say that the Houston Astros are going into spring training without Jose Altuve penciled in with almost permanent marker pretty much but slotted in to be the starting second baseman of the Houston Astros. As of the recording of this podcast, we are. He's one of the best second basemen of all time. It's wild to think that, he is the second best second baseman in Astros history, even though Craig Biggio is right there. But it's true. And he could potentially be moving to the left field, depending on a couple things. And it almost feels like Scott Boras is in charge of that decision. Jose Altuve said that he was very hopeful, and then he lost hope, and now he's hopeful again. We know how you feel, Jose Altuve. But it was Jose Altuve's idea to move to left field for Alex Bregman. A lot of people were speculating, well, there's no way Altuve would do that, until they heard that Altuve was the one who said it. Even people on the team, Jeremy Pena saying he just can't see Jose Altuve in left field. There's a lot of things that would be different if Altuve played left. But right now, we're putting him on top of the second baseman there. Obviously, Dubon is penciled in as a backup, just like almost every other position here. Even first base, Dubon is maybe like penciled in to be the third in the depth chart there. But Dubon's penciled in second here lightly. After that, we do have Shea Whitcomb and Zach DeZenzo there. But penciled in next to them would be Isaac Paredes, because obviously if Bregman shows up, this completely gets reconfigured. We have Christian Walker at first, Isaac Paredes at second, we have JP3 at short, and Bregman at third, moving Jose Altuve to left, putting Jordan in that DH spot for sure, and have them alternating 100 games for Altuve at left, 50 games for Jordan at left, and alternating their DH spots. You then have Jake the Rake in center, Chaz at right, I think Yanner as catcher there. So that kind of is how it would shake out for the most part as their depth chart if Bregman is back. And obviously, I think, Dubon could sneak in there if one of these guys is struggling. I think even, I said Pedro Leon could sneak in there if he has a really hot spring. I think that's a longer shot, but I do think, if Bregman is back, this team is completely stacked. But even without Bregman back, this is a very stacked infield. I'm very excited about this. I do think, it's hard to envision a team without Bregman, that's for sure. We all kind of emotionally moved on. And now, because for whatever reason, all teams are saying that they don't have money. I don't get it. Major League Baseball is a very expensive venture in the sense that we spend a lot of money on merch and going to these games and stuff as fans, and then all of a sudden the owners are acting like they can't pay these players when all of this has been a collective bargaining agreement, trying to figure out how much money is appropriate to pay these players, and now they're saying they can't. It's so weird. I think it's so crazy that Bregman didn't find a home, but this can be something great for the Houston Astros to re-sign Breggy. I'm not one of the guys that's mad at Bregman. If it was me, I hate taking a pay cut. I really do. I negotiate completely always to never take a pay cut in any kind of way because it's just a bad precedent. So I understand, a guy younger than me not wanting to take a pay cut. I get it. I think, and I'm hopeful that Bregman is looking at the market and is looking at the team he loves so much and just meets in the middle here. It can happen, but if that doesn't happen, then perhaps the Astros get Jorge Polanco. You have Polanco there with some veteran leadership. You have some more another utility guy. You have to rely on the younger guys just a little bit less. And I've been listening to. I said, listen to other things. I watch other things so that you don't have to. Something that Chandler Rome said on his podcast, which I don't want to remind you he has in this moment while you're listening to mine as I take a coffee sip. I don't want to give you an opportunity to switch over to his channel, but something he was saying is like, what does this say about the young players for the Houston Astros? What does this say? This whole thing that they're willing to have Bregman come back. What does this say about their confidence in the younger players here? The Zach DeCenzo, Shea Whitcombs, the Brice Matthews coming up, the Jacob Meltons, the prospects that are coming up. That what does it say about the Astros' faith in them? And I get that. That is kind of, Chandler Rome's whole thing working for The Athletic is he does kind of have to come up with these narratives and these articles that will really make people think and get them engaged on things. Sometimes it's supposed to rile them up. I'm not trying to accuse him of clickbait. He's pretty good, compared to a lot of other people. I'm not trying to hate on. I jokingly hate on Chandler Rome a lot, so I'm not trying to be too cruel here. But I think this kind of is this weird kind of narrative because no one ever says that about the Dodgers. No one ever says that about the Yankees. These teams, they go out there, they go on historic spending sprees during free agencies. And no one in their camp is saying, well, what does it say about the Dodgers' trust of their prospects? It just seems like this is some haterism. It seems like Chandler Rome is drinking a little bit of the haterade right now. Chandler Rome likes to drink that because you sell more Astros articles if they're from a negative perspective, if they're spun in a negative way, if you're trying to say that what does this say? I think what it's saying more than anything is that Jim Crane is trying to compete with the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets, these big spending teams, and they're trying to win now. He's not ready for that window to close. Jim Crane does not want the golden era to be over. We thought maybe he did trading Tucker away. Maybe that's what it was. He wanted it to be over. But no, I think he wants them to be competitive, and that Tucker move was a little heartless, logic. Don't let a player walk for nothing. I think Jim Crane wants this team to be successful. I think Jim Crane is learning that you have to kind of go and be willing to spend as much as some of these other teams spend because you're making that investment to be better than them, not only just long term, but in the current day. I don't think that it's necessarily bad to compete with the Yankees and the Dodgers, but it is tough to go on a spending spree that much and expect to still get some developing players coming. You do slow down that log jam a bit. You do slow down that log flume. My metaphors today have been all over the place. This is why Chandler gets paid the big bucks. But yeah, you're creating the log jam with your prospects here where they're not going to get as much playing time on the major league level. I will give him that. I do think that is important, but I do think it is kind of funny because no one ever says that about the Dodgers or the Yankees. I do give him his point, but I'm just saying they never say that. They never say the Dodgers or the Yankees don't believe in their prospects. They're like the Dodgers and Yankees have done it again. They went out there and they signed the biggest player they could and they spent the most money they could. Yay, capitalism. That's the reporting they get. But with the Astros will do the same thing as other teams, and it will be reported as the Astros don't have faith in their prospects. So I just think that's pretty silly. But I do give him that point. I do think that you want to develop those players. You don't want to get into too many long-term contracts that you can't do anything with. You don't want to sign those Abreu contracts or those Rafael Montero contracts. In retrospect, that are just way too much, and you're like, we have too much money on the books because we signed too much. We spent too freely in free agency. So I think signing Bregman is not going to be a contract that anybody regrets. So I'm all for that. I'm all for that. I think sometimes you have to spend a little money. I'm excited that they were able to trade Pressly. And I get, let's kind of talk about Pressly real quick in the trade. Next episode on the podcast next week will be the catchers and the relief pitchers. So we will talk more about relief pitchers and the bullpen going forward. But, Ryan Pressly is arguably one of the best relievers in playoff history. Full stop. The guy was great. I loved Ryan Pressly. He was an amazing pitcher with great stuff, even though he didn't have like a very fast, eye-popping fastball. None of his pitches really were these closer pitcher type arsenal pitches. But he was truly great, and he was starting to age. It definitely was tough to see. I think a lot of fans were very hard on him last year. I was a little hard on him, but I think that's truly because, he was using way too many fastballs that were not being effective and trying to set up his secondary pitches, and it just seemed like he was stubbornly trying to do old things instead of do things that were better for him and his pitching shapes or just it's just something seemed off. Maybe it was the Astros pitching coaches being stubborn. I don't want to put it all on Pressly, but the whole effort just seemed a little stubborn and them doing the same old thing instead of trying to change it up a bit. So I do think that just a little bit of age and a little bit of not making some necessary adjustments was Ryan Pressly's problem last season. I don't think it's this whole thing that he was being a diva and didn't want to play the 8th inning and stuff like that, unless he comes back and explicitly says stuff like that. I don't think that's it. I think it's truly a change of scenery could be a really good thing for Ryan Pressly and could elongate his career a little bit more, because being on a different team, being with a different pitching staff, he could really start making those adjustments in that new scenery. He could, get revitalized by pitching that 9th inning and closing again, because it's a big moment and it's what he's used to. But it is hard. Sometimes these pitchers age and there is a lot of volatile performances as a relief pitcher. It is a tough job, and your results are sporadic. Your appearances are sporadic. You're only there for a very limited time, so the numbers can look really sideways really quick if you don't start off right. We will see how Pressly does. We will be rooting him on, but I do think for the sake of the Astros, it was a good thing to cut ties with him right now. I think it did not look like he was really enjoying pitching as a setup man. It looked like there were some struggles. This kind of makes it a clean break, and you get to move on. You get to have Abreu in the 8th, but now we have to figure out who's pitching that 7th. But we will get to that next time for sure. And with that being said, folks, we're going to go ahead and do it. And that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. Thank you so much. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, share, kick it, pop it, smash all of those buttons in front of me for you. If you've gotten to this part of the podcast, you must like it. Please give us a good review, a 5-star review, not a good review. Give us a good review on something else. Give us a 5-star review on the podcast. Let's be clear. Folks, reach out on social media. You can find us at spacecadetsports.bsky.social on Blue Sky and at Space Cadet Sports on Threads and Instagram. You can call in let us know your takes on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/Space Cadet Sports. Leave us a voicemail. Let us know what you're thinking. Definitely check out my other podcasts. Check me out. You can find me online at Paul Salazar Jr. on all social media platforms. I'm active on most of them, at least all the cool ones. Or not all, but I'm mostly active on Blue Sky now. Definitely Paul Salazar Jr.bsky.social. Definitely check me out. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the Bregman signing or potential signing, if you're all for it, or you're feeling a little stingy and you don't want him back. There's a lot of emotions going on. Let me know what you think of it. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos Astros.